So, anyone have I got chance to look into the sample data and play around it? So, yesterday, one of you like was asking a question, right? Like, what if we do not have a relationship? What is the impact that if we do not have a relationship between the dimension and a fact table? So, as a demonstration, we were looking into that. This is what going to happen, right? The granularity, since this is the total value, this is the total amount, total sales amount for all the regions, for all the regions. But what we can do, so when we have a relationship, accordingly, the data will be given out. Simple, right? It is simple SQL logic as well. So let's say you do not have a relationship between two tables, then how you can find out what is what? I mean, uh, for which sales, for which products the sales amount would be. So similarly in Power BI, we have the same thing. Even the data modeling, everything, everywhere this comes up with the data modeling or the data concepts only. The only thing is that the tool what we are using is varies. So since we do not have a relationship, it is not able to find out the value for each of the product. So yeah, it was somehow it was not working in my machine right yesterday. So I see like the system was asking to restart or upgrade my the components which they were asking from last week. So probably because of that reason, I did not do anything. Even I did not uninstall and install Power BI. I just restarted my system to upgrade the patches. That's it. It automatically got fixed. So let's see what is that. Uh, so we should have a territory key, right? Where it is gone. Okay. In that case, let me reload this model again. Let's come up with a new page, new one. Get the data from Excel. Uh, where I have placed this. Give me a moment. Okay. Yeah. I did the same thing. I downloaded it from the file which I shared with you all. applying the changes to the model. Yeah. So coming back to this model, this is our sales sales table, and where is the territory one? Here it will be. Yeah. So we have these two tables which are of independent, and so we have the territory key. So sales territory key, and just control button and drag that and drop it on the column which you wanted to create a relationship. So the relationship is created now, and let me go to here, and I can uh, search like this. Why? Because when you go to the real time, you will be having many data sets in the model. In such situations, if you know the column names, you can search like this. So the ease very quickly you can do that. And next one, and sales amount. You can see here the sales amount here, and when I use that, you are seeing now. You are seeing now, right? So you can see here how the data is distributed. Why the data is distributed now? Earlier it was showing up one single bar, but why the data is distributed now? Because we have, yeah, let's enable the data levels. We have a relationship between those two tables, the fact and dimension table. So that's the reason we were able to see the data. Clear? So for that reason, we basically establish the relationship between the tables. The relationship between the tables. As I said earlier, the advantage, like we will have the proper granularity between the tables. Well, let's say when we will have a proper granularity between a dimension and measure when we have a relationship. And the other thing is like interactive filtering in the sense which I was talking about from last two sessions. It is nothing like that. So just on a high level I will show you at this point of time, but later we will see a good example. So let's say I will create another visual which show me like customer name. Okay, and let's say English product name, and the product table I will have a category, class, color, and let's say list price as well. So likewise I have, let's say if I wanted to drill down this data, Canada data specific to this region, so automatically if you see the data is filtering out. If I remove this filtering, then the data is getting refreshed automatically, right? If I let's say if I select Southeast, the data is automatically selecting from this visual. So that is nothing but your interactive filtering. That is nothing but our interactive filtering. So when you have, but why it is happening? The reason because it is happening. The reason because it is happening.
There is a relationship between the table.
Yes, it is exactly. Since the relationship is established between all these tables, so that's the reason where this interaction is happening. So if you do not have the relationship that what we have seen, that this will be a static thing. This will be a static thing, and there is no impact. Like when you click on this bar, there will be a change on this one. That interactive will not happen. Since you have in a relationship, since you have a proper model section in Power BI, this section you won't see in the Tableau. We do have the data source, but that is not as like as how we have in the Power BI environment, right? Because in Power BI we have a dedicated section for the modeling. Okay, this is completely modeling. So, and going back to the same thing concept that what we have talked about, here we have a list of relationships. So when we go for a relationship with the auto detect, you remember, right? When I connect to the different systems, like since in this case I pulled all the tables from an Excel. Let's say for suppose I will pull the data from a SQL Server database. Okay, we have all these tables, adventure works. So you can see all the tables, all the views, all the fact tables, dimension tables, and the functions and everything you can see. So let's say for suppose if I wanted to dim or dim currency, it is coming into the model, right? So now what is happening? So in this case, if you see here, though there is a relationship, though there might be a relationship between these two tables and the existing other tables, but it is not establishing. The reason because you are not loading that in one shot. You're not loading in one shot. So for that reason, we have, since we are pulling the data from different sources, different heterogeneous environments, some data sets you are pulling it from the Excel, and some data sets we are pulling it from the SQL Server or a database, relational database. So in such situations, we have an option called auto detect. It will automatically detect the relationships and it will show you if it finds anything. If it is not, it will show you message like this. But these are the various options. Like if you wanted to establish a new relationship, that with this option, new option, we can do it. And or else we can press the control button and drag and drop the columns between the tables, so that the relationship will be established automatically by looking into the underlying data between the tables. So if it is a one-to-one relationship, then it will automatically create one-to-one, or else one-to-many, or many-to-one. Accordingly it will do that. Or else if you wanted to modify the existing relationship which you do not want to, then again you can go to the edit button and you can select the particular relationship and click on the edit button and do the change. Okay, so that's how we can do it. And this is enter data. If you see here, this is enter data. Let's say if I wanted to add something, or else let me open the same demo Excel. Or else I have a small set of a data, a small set of data. Let's say take an example, this one, which is from a text file or something like that, just imagine. So if I wanted to load the data, or if I wanted to create that one, so I can come simply and load that, control C and control V. So this is a manual way of doing it. Okay, you can see here, right, the first rows of the data you have pasted have been promoted, the column headers. That is what we wanted. If something like that, I mean, we wanted to have this data and there are no columns here, though there are no headers here, but still you can do it. If you don't want to do that, undo headers, that is also possible. And if you wanted to add the columns, likewise you can manually type that. Manually type that. And that data can be loaded into the model. Okay, this is another way of loading a table. So if you see in the bottom, there you have an option for giving the table name while loading. Also, if you miss to load the table, miss to give the table name when loading, that is also correct. That is also possible. If you see here, it automatically created the relationship by looking into the data. So if you see here, and I can rename this one. There should be an option for renaming. Yeah, it will be there in the edit query. Let's go there. So this is the window which we are talking about. This is the window which we are talking about. So there are three sections, right? What is the architecture here? The Power BI. One is a modeling section, another one is a transformation, that is nothing but Power Query, another one is view, Power View. So by combining all these three makes it as Power BI. So here the map model, this section we can create the tables, relationships, and when it is coming to the Power Query, it is the place where you can do the transformations. You can do the transformations, and this is the place where we can create the visuals. Power View. This is called Power View. So these are the three different components. These are the three different components in the Power BI desktop itself. And reports. Okay. So this makes the complete product called Power BI desktop. This makes the complete product called Power BI desktop. Okay. So model, Power Query, and Power View. So anyways, we do not want this one just for the testing purpose. We have loaded this, but anyways, let's keep it. It is not going to impact anything. So here is the place where you can change the name of the table. Okay. I can give something like team products, but anyways, we are not going to use this one. And once you made any changes, then what you can do, you can simply click on this button and close and apply, so that the changes will be applied to the report. Why? Because this is a separate window. If you see here, that's a separate window. The table name is changed here. Okay, so when you go here, this is our Power BI desktop window, and when you come back to this model section, once you see that all the changes related to the model is done, then let's say you wanted to do some kind of a modifications on top of the existing data, modifications in the sense manipulations or the transformations. Okay, so in such cases, we have this transformation data. Under this transformation data, we have an option called transform data. Okay, so when you click on the transform data, you can see there is a new tab. New window is getting opened. New window is getting opened. That window is nothing but Power Query editor window. Okay, so when it comes to the Power Query editor window, you can see all these tables. So this is the place where we can do all our transformations, basically the ETL work, all the ETL work that we can do. So let's say take an example. If you see the customer, okay, so the customer, if you see here in this customer table, you can do any modifications. You can do all the modifications. We will go on one by one. See, so every change that you are doing here, right, all the changes that would be captured here. Every change, every modification that we do, all the changes would be captured here. Okay, so let's say I don't want this geography key to be there in this table. So what I can do, I can simply go and click on this remove column or remove other columns. Let's say I have selected these two columns, customer key, birth date. That's it. I want these three columns only. So, but let's say the table is having 100 columns. So it is difficult, right? It is difficult for us to go to each and every column and right click and remove that column. So instead of that, we have given with two options. One is remove columns, and the one is remove other columns. So I already selected the columns which I wanted for reporting. Then I can simply go ahead and select this option so that all the rest of the columns will be deleted. This will make our job easy. So the features that you see throughout these sessions, like in Power BI side, these are the tool features, and most of the features that you see are from Excel only. There are very few features which you uniquely see, but if you're really good in doing the Excel in before, then it won't be a new thing for you. Why? Because Microsoft has used almost all the concepts from the Excel only. The DAX, we were talking about DAX, right? So when it comes to the Power BI, so it is a kind of a must and should questions which comes one or two questions from the DAX. Every interview or even the real time also may or may not be required to write down the DAX queries. But when it is what is a DAX? So this is not a new technology or a new language. Analytical expressions, that is not even that came up with as a new product with the Power BI. It is already there in Excel from many years. If you worked in before with the Excel, so DAX even you is not a new thing for you. So the same concept Microsoft has used in the Power BI itself. So in the beginning of the session I mentioned, right? So Power BI was there with Excel in before. It was it came into a different product from Excel. It as an independent product from the Excel by combining all the model, Power Query, and Power View into a single product called Power BI Desktop, maybe around in 2016 or 17. But prior to that, we still have a Power BI, but that was a component in Excel with limited features, but the same architecture, how it operates over there, the same architecture they have used here, nothing changed. But the only thing is the features got changed. Okay, so coming to this, so we have seen that, right? So let's go and see like individual features over here. So let's say if I wanted to change the data types, we have all these different data types.
Manik,
Okay.
I have a question here.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we are only doing this on Power BI side, right? I mean, like this is not, we are not doing any changes on the master data side. I mean, like not on the SQL Server database or anything. This is only within internal Power BI, right? Everything.
Exactly. Whatever the transformation. So if you remember how we started the flow, first we pulled the data from into the Power BI report. Once the data is loaded into the Power BI report, then in the model we created the relationship. Then once the relationship is created, then we are doing the transformation. So everything is happening on the Power BI side. So let's say you have deleted a column in the Power BI report that doesn't impact anything to the actual data which is present in the database.
Okay, yeah, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. So imagine that this is the table and database, or it is an Excel only. So let's say if I'm deleting this column, it will not be deleted in the actual source of the of this data. It will be all the modifications, transformations will be applied on the Power BI side only. So that's the reason the changes that what we are applying here, we need to be very cautious. Why? Because if you see, let's say take an example, I selected this one and remove this column. So the column got removed. But the moment I deleted this one, you might see that the things got capturing here. What are the changes that I'm doing? Everything is getting recorded here. So the more the recordings will happen, right? So what happens? Every time when you refresh the data, it has to follow through all these steps. So definitely it hits the performance of the report. So that's the reason we need to be very cautious when we are using each and every action from these transformations, even in the Power BI side. Power BI side in the sense, let's say you have created some measures using the DAX, but also we need to be very cautious. So what functions we are using, what calculations that we are in, everything impacts the performance. Impacts in the sense, at up to certain extent, we can go ahead and use these things. So if the underlying data is huge or millions of the records, then definitely it hits the performance. But there is a solution for doing that. We will talk about it. Okay. So let's come back here. Okay. So we are talking about this one, right? So next one. Okay. So basically, let's say if I wanted to choose any columns, that particular columns can be chosen out. Okay. For different purpose. Like I wanted to create a different section with these columns. That is also possible. And next thing, very importantly, if you see here, we have a different tabs here in the Power Query editor window itself. We have a different tabs. If you see, when I click on this transform, it has vast features, all of them: transpose, reverse count, count rows, and group by. So let's say take an example of a customer table, and let's go to this product sales table itself. I wanted to do the grouping by order date. Let's see, if you click on this one, see what is happening. So it has given this window to us. So I wanted to do the grouping by order date, or even if I wanted, I can change also. So let's say if I change this one to advanced section, I can add the grouping, right? When in SQL, how we used to do in SQL, there is no restriction for us that in a single query you can have only one column as a group by clause. You can have n number of columns. Let's say there is a requirement. I have a requirement. I wanted to see the total sales by product, by subcategory. So in that case, what I need to use, I need to write down by product, subgroup by product, comma, subcategory, right? Similarly, that is the place like that you need to write down the queries manually in SQL. But when it comes to Power BI, it is eliminated. Why? Because this is a tool. You don't require to write anything. You just need to know the futures. That's it. You just need to know the futures. So that's it. It will do the job for us. So let's say I wanted to do the grouping by order date, and also by, is there any other column that we can use? Or let's first look into this one. Okay. So delete this one. And I wanted to see the count by count rows So for counting the rows, you don't require it. Let's say change this one by sales amount, order date wise sales amount. So I will give this one as total sales. So when we give these names, we give this when it is comparing to the SQL, we give this as a aliasing name. So what we are doing it. Basically what we are doing it. Let's say add another column. This one, this time it will be like order date wise, max value, and this again I will choose the sales amount. So what we are doing, this one, what we are trying to achieve, let's say since you all good with SQL, and let's see like how internally it works. So if you see this window, it would be easy for us. What we are doing, let's say this is the table, and we are doing a group by on order date, right? We are doing group by order date, and we are generating the two new columns, right? We are generating the two new columns, order date and sum of sales amount, that we are displaying as total sales, comma, and max of sales amount by order, but by order date we wanted to see the maximum sales amount that happened on that day. Okay, that as max sales. That's it. So instead of writing this query, we are achieving this same thing by choosing the options what we have available here. What we have available here. So when I click on this one, what will happen? I got created with that. So if you see here, that sales table, the fact table, the entire fact table got created, converted. It removed all the other columns. It removed all the other columns, and it created an aggregated table for us. But let's say if you do not want to override the existing table structure, you wanted to create that as a separate table. How we can do that? So go back, remove this one at any point. Let's see if you can go back to any position. Let's say if you wanted to go back to this position, still you can go back to that position. Now you wanted to fix that one, so you have to remove this, change the type. Now you are back. Now you are back to this table structure. So how you can create a new table? You can, when you right click on this one, you have a listed with all these options: copy, delete, rename. You can again rename. This is the place again. You can rename the table names. Okay, 3 different places that we are seeing. This is one place, and when we are loading the data, that time again you can rename that one, and this is another one. So these are the 3 different options where you can do that. And next one comes up with a duplicate or reference. Okay, so reference we will talk about, and move to group. And this one, this is the option which we are looking for. Why? Because we wanted to have a duplicate. We wanted to create a separate table. We wanted to create a separate table. Sales summary. Sales summary. So why do we, what we need to do? We need to do the same thing what we have done in before. So we'll select the date and group by, and let's say go to the advanced section and total sales. Sum of the sales and the sales amount, aggregate, max sales, and I will go with the max, or else the total sales. Let's take total sales. Let's even look into that one. But we can see like total number of sales in a day. Count rows by order date. That you know, right? Count function. Click on this one. So this will be converted. Now you can see, let's say for this date, the total sales is this one, and the number of sales are 87 on that day. Okay, clear? So we have created with a separate table, and when you see here, if I do a join, create a relationship with the sales table, with a calendar table, what will happen? I will not just get the information, the summary, not by date, whatever the columns, even if I wanted to know the month wise, still I can pull that information. Why? Because I have a relationship between these two. So month wise, I can do it. So that is how you need to build your model as well as transformations. Once you made the changes, then you can convert that into a table, and that table again you can use it into a relationship within the model.
So now, Manik, if you go into the model, I'm like, we'll be having a new table as like a sales summary over there.
Exactly. So, but if I go now, I will not find that. If I go here, I will not find that. But what we need to do that, you can see here, right? This is a new window. This is a new window. So every time when you're doing this one, remember this usual practice. What some of the developers they do, once they made changes, they will simply click on this one. When you click on this cross button, don't think that the changes will be applied. Okay, you have to click on, this is the best practice. Let's say you may change some changes. Sometimes you don't, you don't do it. You just wanted to open this query window, Power Query window, to examine or to observe like what is going on. So in that purpose, you open this one. So in that case, you can simply close it. But if you really wanted to apply the changes, let's say you have made some changes. We created this table and aggregated that one, and we don't want to close this window. So what is the option we have to choose? Apply only. So once you click on this apply button, so what will happen? That changes will be applied to the model. You don't need to close this window. You can work on the further changes. For that reason, we have different options here.
So Manik, I have one more question.
Yeah.
I know we went with like a group by function,
Mhm.
but I mean like that in the SQL we can write a lot of other functions also, right?
Group.
Like maybe
Mhm.
like case statements or replace functions or something. I mean, like, can we do that over here, like creating those new columns here? Or?
Yes. Everything we can do it. Everything we can do it. So the only reason for learning SQL, why? Because now see how you are thinking of, like we have a SQL and you are comparing it now, right? So why you are able to do that? Since you are good with SQL and now you are learning Power BI. So that is the reason in the beginning I told, right? What is that?
Okay.
So you once you learn that SQL and Power BI, then you are the decider. You can decide. You should be in a position to decide like where exactly I can implement that change. It can be done the case statement in Power BI. It can be done in the SQL. So now I have to decide where it can be implemented. Why? Because end of the day, your job is not to implement the requirement. You also need to take the performance of the report.
Yes.
So that's how you will decide it. But why we have those options in the Power BI? Why? Because every time it is not the case that you will work with a relational database systems. You may work with the
Exactly.
entire Excel or a CSV file as a source for your reporting. So there it is not possible for implementing that case statement. So that is the reason we have those options. The tool, this is a tool. So you have all these options. If something is not possible, then again, we have DAX. So using DAX, you can write down the case statements, you can generate the new columns. And once the new columns got generated, again, we can come back to this Power Query editor window and do the grouping, and we can create a new table, implement it. That's it. Clear with the flow, right?
Yes, Manik. Yeah.
Yeah. So far, what we have covered. Yeah, good. So this is a new table which is created. And if you see here, since I applied the changes from here, even though if I'm not closing this window, but we should see the table here. We should see that sales table here. Where is that? Yeah, here it is. Okay. So what happened? This is another example. So basically, I don't want a relationship to be created with this fact table. Why? Because this is something that I have derived from the fact table only. Okay, but I don't want a relationship to be created. Since it found the order date in both the tables, so it automatically created the relationship. This is a huge case. So what I need to do, I want a relationship to be created with this calendar table, so that what can happen, I don't need to create a columns individually in the summary table. If I wanted to drill down the data by month, by year, by a period, okay, by a fiscal quarter, everything I can do it if I have a relationship between this calendar and sales summary. So what I have to do, I have to select this and I have to delete this, or else what we can do, instead of deleting, I will simply go to the relationship, edit relationship, and I will choose the calendar table. From there, I will select this date, and it is a one-to-one relationship I have here. Definitely it will be a one-to-one relationship only. Why? Because calendar table is the dimension table, and the summary table is also a aggregated table, an aggregated table, and that we have created for each date. So definitely we'll be having only one record for each date. So that's the reason we have this one-to-one relationship. Click on OK, and the model will be updated automatically by establishing the relationship with these two. Okay, so if I go to the visual now, and let's create something like, you have the sales summary here, and where is the calendar table? Yeah, we have a calendar table here. Okay, so since I have a relationship between my summary sales and this one, and here I can generate the data, I can generate the sales by quarter. If I go here and select this total sales, why we have two columns with the sales? Okay, I might have given with the sum and count with the same name. Okay, anything missed over here? Let's order date wise. So we can see the total count. Total sales amount, and this amount, if you're seeing here, this amount 2.93, and the same thing, what happened to this? Did we change anything to the relationship? Again, something went off with this model, I guess. Okay, let's click close and apply. Where is that sales amount? Yeah, so we have this, and if you see here, okay, let's convert this one into a table again. Now we have a count of sales, it is automatically generating. I mean, the moment, see, when you pull these measures, right, you should be very cautious again on the measure side. So why? Because measures automatically, it is not just your job to click on this check button. You can also drag and drop. So there are two approaches. One is selecting the checkbox. So automatically that will be added to the this column section, or it depends on the visual that what we have. So again, we will talk about that. But when you see the measures, it automatically creates the grouping. So if you see here, this is automatically done. So if I go and do this, do not summarize, then I can see. Then I can see regional wise sales. Okay. Yeah. So going back to this Power Query editor window. Again, from the model, again, we can go, and even the visual also we can go here. There you have an option called transform data. Let's say if there is any change in the password in the database, generally that happens, right? If there is any change in the database, so that definitely the report won't be accessible. It will break down basically. Why? Because it stops accessing the data. So let's say if I go and select this SQL Server. Okay, so this is like till now what we have seen. We learned like how we pull the data from Excel. When you click on that Excel, it is basically asking the source where your Excel workbook is. But when you click on the SQL Server as a source, this is a relational database. And when you see that one, you will be populated with this window. And first it asks you to enter the server, then it comes up with a database. Database is purely optional, but you need to enter the server name. So that what will happen? It will load all the databases for you in that window. Once you enter, click on the OK button, it will load all databases for you. But it sometimes, if everything is like loaded with a lot of information, it takes a few minutes for you to come up with that window. So that's the reason generally we give the database for which we generally work with. Okay. And this comes up with very interesting and important function. Now there are two data connectivity modes. Data connectivity modes. Okay, if you see here, this is a data connectivity mode. So what are these options? One is import and other one is a direct query. Import and a direct query. So what is the difference between these two? Import will entirely import the data into your report. Import will import the data into your report. But when we see that Excel, we do not have that option, whether I can go with the import or direct query. Why? Because it is not a query based functionality. We have to completely import the data, and once every time when the new Excel comes into that particular location, we need to schedule our report to refresh the data, so that as per the schedule it will run and give the data to us. But when it is coming to the relational database systems, we have these options: import and direct query. So import means what are the tables that I will select, all the data will be loaded into our database, and again either in the Power BI server or Power BI service. So I need to create the schedules for refreshing the data. Why? Because it is not the case that the tables which I have imported, they should be static. They should be loaded with the current data, right? Let's say the underlying tables are loading with the data daily. So if I do not create the schedule, if I'm not creating the schedule, what happens? The data won't get refreshed. So definitely we will see a stale data in the report. So for that reason, though we have an import option, we can schedule the report. Then comes up with direct query. What is a direct query? Direct query in the sense you will be lively connecting with your database. You are not importing your data into the Power BI report. You are not importing the data of your tables from the source into your report. Then what you are doing? Let's say if the user wanted to, you have some filters in the visual, and the moment user selected that for so and so products, I will select from the drop down, and accordingly my visual should be refreshed. So everything that you do, the moment it instantly at runtime, the selected product names will be supplied to the database, and it will ask the database, hey database, you need to run this query or a table or a stored procedure, you can use it. So my user need only the information related to that selected products. So accordingly, the database will pull that information, send it back to you, and that will be displayed here. So it is something, a network traffic. You understand, right, how it works? So when it comes to the import, since you are importing the data well in advance entirely into the Power BI report, since the data is already in-house into the report, so that is something different. compared to the process that what you are following. Compared to the process. So in direct query, you are not pulling anything.
Manik, I have a question over here.
Yep. Go ahead, Tejan. Hello. Hello, Lisa, you are there?
Yeah, Manik, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I lost you in between. Yep.
Yeah, I think your voice is breaking, or I'm not sure. My voice is breaking.
Probably my network is bad today. Let me check it once.
So that means that, for example, I mean, like I know a client, I mean, like they have the data, it's like refreshing every 10 minutes for them.
Right.
So it's like an data warehouse. So they are
Mhm.
bringing the data from the transaction like every 10 minutes. They are loading the data.
Right.
So when the users are running their reports, I mean, like they want to see always the live data, right? But they are not hitting the transaction, but they are
Right.
hitting the data warehouse. But data warehouse is also refreshing, but every 10 minutes.
Exactly. Good.
So at that time, I mean, like, what is the option over here then?
Right. I will explain you. All the features, all the options that what we have with the import and direct query. Then you can decide like whether for which case we have to go for a direct query or import. Okay. This is a big thing. Vast thing. So let's discuss everything like what we have with import and all direct query. So if you remember in the first day of the Power BI session, we have seen like the different licenses, right? Premium and pro license. And there we have noticed that premium was giving 48 refresh times that you can do in a day. Premium capacity, right? 48 times you can refresh your. That means for every 30 minutes you can do the refresh. Max it can be. That is the max limit. Maximum capacity, like even if you're taking the higher version or upgraded version of the license, but still that is the maximum limit that it is giving for us. But in your example, you have a 10 minutes. So even if you are procuring the premium license, premium capacity license, but this is not going to helpful for you.
Yes.
Right? So what is the solution? So you do not left with any other option. You have left with only direct query. You left with.
But if there are like, for example, like 100 reports, like 100 reports, we cannot go with the direct query, right?
We have to. If 100 reports are there and you know that the transaction is happening in every 10 minutes, then there is no other option for you. You have to go with the direct query only. But here, that another problem which comes in real time, and we all see that. Let me tell you what is that. Direct query works well, perfectly fine to address your requirement of refreshing. Why? Because it is not a 10 minutes refresh. It is lively connecting. It is lively connecting to your database. Even if the data gets refreshed for 1 minute also, there is no, I mean, you don't need to bother about it. Why? Because the moment the user runs the report, since it is chosen with a direct query, it directly go to the database and talk to the database and will pull the results for you. Whatever it is, instantly the snapshot of the data which is presented at that point of time.
Okay.
But when the direct query will throw a challenge for you, let's say you build your query, SQL query with multiple tables, okay, and multiple joins. I mean, basically multiple tables with different joins, and some complex logics as well.
So you mean the direct query, right?
Exactly, direct query. So within that, you have written very big query and you have uploaded the performances and everything. And the query, when you run in your database directly, it is taking like hardly how much time? It is taking maybe few seconds. Okay. But sometimes what happens, the queries may take longer time to execute because of the complexity. Let's say if it is a simple table, if you are performing a direct query on a view, a single view, database view, that is fine. But let's say your requirement is to pull the data from multiple tables and you have defined with a complex logic. And imagine that this logic, you are not writing any query here. You have placed this logic within the database view itself. You have placed that view. But even if you're calling this view, still again takes the performance of a query for 2 minutes. Assume that. Okay, then this is a challenge for you, right? Why? Because
Exactly.
in this situation, your refresh rate is 10 minutes. So you're not in a position to use the import option, and you left with only direct query. And the other challenge with your direct query is the query what you have, or the database view that you have, it is taking 2 minutes for you to retrieve the data for every selection from the report. So the reason, because the underlying tables, when you have a billions or millions of the records, in the underlying tables of this view, then definitely it hurts the performance. So what is your next action item? What is your next action item for resolving these kind of issues in the challenges that we encounter? Usually we encounter this. Every project should encounter this when they're dealing with the billions of or billions of the records, when the refresh rate is like this. So we all face this. So what we do usually, the option left with, to improve the performance of the SQL query in either any way, in any chance, like we have to improve that one. The other thing, what we do, we propose a solution. It is not a solution that can be implemented in a single day, but for your understanding, for everyone's understanding. So what we do, why do we need to maintain a millions or billions of the records in the table? So we will propose an archival process, a retention policy.
Yes, exactly.
You propose a retention policy. So what we do, we create a replica database. Okay, little bit advanced, but understand this. Why? Because important for everyone, and they generally ask these kind of a tricky questions even in the interviews as well. Okay, so replica database, we will create that one. So what we will do, let's say the current project, current database, current company structure is maintained in 10 years of the data. So that's the reason we are encountering that issue. Why? Because when you deal with the 10 years of the data, which is of a millions or a billions of the records, then definitely for processing the data between these tables and return the results, definitely it's the performance. So the solution is, what you do, you will talk to the business, and hardly like what is the frequent usage of yours? Hardly last 2 years of the data you deal with for every report that you generate frequently. So then in that case, you will come to a conclusion. Okay, what we will do, we are not going to delete the rest of the 8 years of the data. We will move the data to a different database that we call archive database. Archival database. So what will happen? So we will also provide an option to the business that whenever you require, you just raise a request so that we will generate the data for you, or else we will create a separate report for you that will be pointing to this archival database, so that for a temporary time being you can use it. It may be like you will understand from the business that what is the frequency of that kind of request that comes in. Maybe hardly once in a year. That's okay. Why? Because hitting the performance every day and every minute, so coming up with the solution will helpful. Yeah. Got the answer?
Yep. Okay, Manik.
Yeah. So that's how we deal with basically. So the main thing, this comes up with your SQL knowledge. So you should be good in I talk about. There should be situations every time. It is not that you will be having the simple things like just import the data and do the job and schedule the report. Since I have all the resources in the sense I have these options in the service. So that doesn't mean that you just need to limit your knowledge up to that extent, certain extent. So the SQL comes up a vital role here when something comes in your plate that to improve the performance. So what you can do, you can improve the performance of the queries by applying many performance improvement techniques. So even after implementation of all the techniques, but still it is taking longer time, then you have other option for proposal. Since you are moving the data of 8 years from each of these underlying tables, then definitely dealing with the 2 years of the data will reduce or minimize the efforts from 100% to 20%. I mean, 80% of the time consumption earlier it used to take that you are going to reduce. Why? Because out of 10 years, 8 years of the data you are taking off. I mean, it is also all kind of a discussion. Maybe the business will say we hardly use the last 1 year of the data. Why? Because the reports that we generate, the trending of the reports, that is even displaying last 12 months of the data. So again, then in that case, the 9 months of the 9 years of the data will be moved to archival database. So it will come down. The let's say if it is taking 2 minutes, then it definitely will come down to seconds for the business to run the report. So that's how like you will check the performance or resolve the performance issues with your report. Okay, so that's how like we can use these options. When you connect to this SQL Server database, we do have these 2 options. So though we do have these 2 options, like import and direct query, and there is another option called composite model. Okay, so the composite model, which is built with some data sets which are built with a direct query, and some data sets which are with import mode in your model. Then that model is called composite model. Okay, remember this. Okay, so this is the place where you can use your SQL queries. Okay, either you can write down SQL queries or select star from table name or select star from view name. Anything you can do it. Anything you can do it. And this is the command where you have a timeout. Basically, I have used this in my earlier reports that you can set it for 60 minutes or 45 minutes. So that what will happen, generally what the DBA team will do, they will set a cutoff time. They will set a threshold for the timeout of your queries. It is not the case that you will run a query for 2 hours or something like that in your company. Why? Because the time it takes for you, right? Since if the query is taking 2 hours, then definitely there is a big issue with your query. So the time you're running, it will lock all your tables for the other users to use it, or for other processes to use it. There might be some other process which are loading the data into those tables. So everything will be stopped, everything will be paused. So you're creating a blocking here. So that's the reason generally they do 15 minutes.
Oh, this is a nice option, Manik. Yeah, this connection timeout.
Yeah. So if you set this one 45 minutes or 60 minutes, what will happen? What is the default timeout which is set by the DBA team, that will be overwritten for this report, and it will wait till the 45 minutes or 60 minutes generally you set it for. But why this is happening? Why the option is provided to us? Why? Because sometimes what happens, the queries that you have written here, right, that will be again the big queries, and processing the queries again, sometimes it takes a time. It is, let's say you're running the report at the peak time, or you're designing the run report at peak time. Some of the tables are not available, which are already occupied by some other process, or if not at all these cases, and let's imagine that the tables itself are very huge and it is taking longer time, the query itself, to run it. In such situations, you need to build your report. Why? Because your report is an import report, but for the first time anyways, you need to use that query. Why? Because once it is done in the non-peak hours, non-business hours, you will schedule it in the service. That is your requirement. So what you do, you need to set this command, timeout option. Okay, clear? Any questions from anyone?
No.
All good. So thinking that you need practice, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So let's give a pause here for today's session, and let's continue tomorrow to talk about the rest of the things. Okay.
Yeah. Good day. Go India.
Yeah. See you all tomorrow. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye everyone.
Bye.